Alright, I think you can see the mark there. There's a black mark, and below that is a P. And if you'll look right in the middle of that black mark, there is a hole that I've drilled, and I'm going to put a Tek screw in there, and that's what's going to hold the bracket. But it says in the instructions to, instead of trying to center the pipe on the mark, put the Tek screw in on the mark, and then that'll make it easier to line up the purlin. So this is the bracket that's going to go in there and hold the purlin in place. I've already drilled a hole, so I'm going to use the Tek screw and put it in. Now I'm going to back it out just a little bit so it'll be somewhat loose, and I can get the purlin in there. So that's the procedure we're going to be going through. 26 times. Okay, one thing I did not do, I didn't drill and screw the other side of this bracket. But before we start putting these purlins up, I'm thinking that might be a good thing to do, and that way we can just slide the purlins into the bracket and won't have to worry about holding everything in place while we're drilling a hole to put the other screw for the bracket in. So I may decide to do that. Now that I've got the hole in there, I'll take my impact driver, have a screw already in there, and get this guy started. And there we go. So we'll do that on every one of the pipes, and then the pipe will just fit right through here, and it'll be a lot easier to line them up. Okay, now the instructions say to put the purlins together and lay them along the toe board, and then mark the locations of all of the anchor bolts. So we're marking both sides of the anchor post. We're going to have to cut off this end as we expected. Now you can see the black mark on the right is where the inside of the bow should go, and the clamp, where we need to cut off, is going to be on the outside edge, which would be the left edge of the bow. So we're going to need to move the bow so that it's going to line up, and then we'll screw this in tight, and then I'll get the hacksaw and cut the end off. And you can see that the black mark is on the outside edge of the bow, and the other black mark, and that says cut line, the other black mark is on the right hand edge. So we're locked in on both ends now, and we can adjust the ones in the middle. You can look down and see that it's pretty darn straight. So that's good. We got one set of those in, and we're ready to go the other side. I'm down here by myself today, and I'm going to try and get this other purlin up by myself. Okay, we're going to be doing the same thing we did before. We're going to put the screw that's on the upper right on the black mark for the purlin, and then we'll mark the other end of the clamp and drill a hole there. So we'll drill the hole, put the screw and clamp on, and then drill the other hole. But they're all going to be the same as we did on the other side. Okay, as you can see, I've got the pipe laid along the toe board, the top of the toe board, and I'm using some clamps to clamp it down there because it tends to roll off. And I've got it, as you can see, all the way down to the other end of the hoop house. Now, before we mark it, we want to make sure that the joints, the swaged end pushed into the unswaged end of the pipe, are tight. This is what they should look like. This one needs a little bit of help. So I'm going to have to tighten these joints up. So I'm going to use a hammer on the other end. And the last one is not as loose as the others, but it needs to be tightened up a little bit. Now what we need to do is just basically jam these pipes together. So basically I'm going to use a board like this, right up against that post, and a mini sledge, and I'm just going to gently tap this down until it gets the end of the pipe is even with the face of this anchor post. Okay, that's got it. It's even with the anchor post. And what I'm going to do is get one of the other clamps and clamp this in really good, and then I'll drive it from the other end and put the joints all up together tight before I mark it. Okay, now I've got a clamp there that's clamped the purlin pipe to the last anchor post. But now I'm going to go down to the other end and bang these pipes together and make sure that all the joints are tight. And I'm going to use the same technique that I used down at the other end. I'm going to use a mini sledge and a piece of wood. Alright, that looks like it, so let me go down and check the other end. Now last time I had Cheryl to help me do this, but I'm all by myself today, so I'm having to do it myself. So I'm going to mark this side of the pole, and then this side of the pole, and then I got those two marks there. That's where the hoop needs to be in relation to this purlin. Okay, I'm going to do these just exactly like Cheryl and I did the other side, except this time I'm going to be doing it by myself. Now, what that means, the clamps are all up there, they're loose, and the purlins ought to slide through them fairly easily. And what I've got to make sure is that I've got a purlin in two clamps before I let go of it. Otherwise, it's going to go everywhere. As soon as I get it in two clamps, then it's pretty solid. Now on these intermediate bows, I'm not going to tighten those clamps at this time. I'm going to wait until I get all this purlin in place and jammed up tight, and then I'll go back and clamp one or two of them. But remember this, after we get all the purlins in, then we've got to go back and make sure that each hoop is plumb and that they're all spaced correctly. So it'll be a while. I'm going to get these other ones in and we'll go from there. Okay, I've got a bunch of adjusting to do, but the second purlin is up. This is the one on the west side, and I need an extra set of hands when I tighten this all together and make the purlins, the marks on the purlins line up with the hoops, or make the hoops line up with the purlin marks, or whatever it is. But that's done. And it's taken me about a little over 2.5 hours by myself to drill the holes, put the clamps up, and mark the purlins and get the purlins at least initially in place. So that's not too bad, and I'm happy.